I guess it didn't. Okay, thanks. Okay, control return. And in our console output, we have the input we started with, and then these 3 columns of numbers that have been printed. So, what's happening? Each of these rows of numbers corresponds to one instance of the print function being run, and each of these columns corresponds to the 3 entries you put inside of the print statement that we want to be printed as the loop runs. And so when we start, right, I, for this loop, is going to span from 0 to the length of this list of numbers. So from 0 to 9. Excuse me. Right, there's 10 numbers, but we're starting at 0, so we're going 0 to 9. So first, I takes on the value of 0, and then, so when we think about these loops are one step at a time. First, I is 0, and then we're going to do things under the assumption I is 0. What we're going to print the value of I, which is 0, it's printed. Then we're going to print the 0th value of numbers list, which is the number 1. And then I'm going to print 2 times the 0th value of number list, which is 2 times 1 is 2. And then once that's done, that's what this first row printed here is. 0, the value of I. 1, the 0th element in that list, and then 2 times the value. Then we, well, nothing else to do. So that iteration of the loop is over. I now advances to the next value of 1, and then the loop starts over at the top and repeats. And so now I takes on the value of 1. We index number list for the 1th entry, which is the number 2. Then we multiply that number by 2. Hit the end of the loop, advance the value of I, and repeat all the way until we get to the end. Any questions on that idea?
Does Python have like a incrementing feature like plus plus, like I plus plus is the next
Yes.
value?
Yes. Sometimes you may need to manually update a value separate from your index, your loop iteration value. So maybe I'm gonna count the number of times this thing runs, because maybe sometimes it's gonna hit an error and it's not gonna run. I don't know how many times it tried to run. Make up a scenario. So I'll type count equals 0, and then inside of this loop, I'll type count plus equals 1, which is the command I think you're asking about. Plus equals is just shorthand notation for reassignment. It's the same thing as me typing count equals count plus 1. So now every time this loop runs an iteration, we're going to add a value of 1 to the variable count. And that way we can kind of count the number of times this loop has run. So now if I run the cell, I ran it, great. Nothing new was printed because I didn't say to print anything about count. But if I come down to the console and type count and return, it's going to tell me count equals 10. That matters when we talk about while loops, something like that can be more important for making sure the loop doesn't go on forever. Okay, any other questions? I'm going to talk about sort of different variations of setting up loops, but otherwise this is the idea of a for loop in all its glory. Okay, so I mentioned the range function is similar to the colon start colon stop indexing technique. I really mean it. You can make a third entry in the range function to do skips, integer skips, the same way we did with the colons. So I can type for I in range parentheses 0, comma, length of number list, close parentheses, comma, 2, close parentheses, quote. So now we're going to go by 2s as we run this loop, as opposed to every single integer. inside the loop, the same print, I'm going to just copy and paste this print command from before. Press Control Return, and now we have rows printed because the loop only ran for every integer.
No, because some student Alex's broadcast crashed, and
okay,
so a lot of the
I'm going
students
to have to use the range
are
function
no longer online. So I'm
um,
trying to get them back to technical difficulties.
total index take on the values in an object we're looping through. So an example here, we could type for I number list, colon. Now I'll automatically just take on those values of the things in number list. So I will just type print I and 2 times I. Maybe you don't care to have the integers defined by the range function as the values for your index. You just want the index I to take on separate values that you're looping over. Press Control Return, and we get that. The problem with this is that the object I'm iterating over, I'm looping over, is a list of the integers, so that's not the most obvious example. So we'll do this one more time with a string instead. So here, for example, I'll type string, test string equals, in quotes, cheese, and then a loop for I in test string, colon. So now I is going to take on the letters CHEESE during each of the iterations of the loop, instead of it taking on the value 0 and then you index the string with 0. We can cut out that middle step if we don't really need it. I'll print 10 times the value I, hit Control Return.
Or down for what?
So now the output is first I takes on, well, it takes on the first character in test string, which is the letter C. Print 10 times I, print the letter C 10 times. And then we hit the end of the loop, go back to the start. I advances on to the next letter in cheese, which is H, and then we print 10 times that letter, or 10 H's. So that's a more concrete example of what I mean by you can forego the range function if you won't need integers with which to index things in your loop. Okay. And then one last aspect with loops, which we need for this activity. Maybe as you're doing something in your loop, you want to save something that you did in that loop object. To do that, we need to define the object as an empty object to begin with, so it has a place to be saved. So what I mean, we're going to loop through this test string, and every time we encounter the letter E, we're going to where am I? Geez, I changed my examples. I apologize. I'm going to loop through the letters in Philadelphia. Fine, we'll use that still. So I just have to redefine test string. Test string equals, in quotes, Philadelphia. Now, every time we encounter the letter P, I want to save that letter in a new string and also capitalize that so it's a capital P. Okay, so first we'll define, or it's called initialize, an empty string. I'm going to call it new underscore string, space equals, and then I just type 2 single quotes with nothing in between them. This means that is an empty string. If I execute this block just as it is, hit Control Return, and we look at new string in the variable explorer, you see that it's just blank. There's nothing there because it's an empty object. Now I have a location I can save objects in my loop as I do things to other objects and loop through them in the loop. So what's that part look like? I will type the loop for I in test string. The idea is if I becomes the letter P,
I want to save the value of I as a capital letter. So I'll type if I is exactly equal to the lowercase p colon, that's our condition in our if statement. Now we do something. I'm going to reassign new string and say new string equals what it was before, new string with an underscore plus I dot upper. And so a couple things are happening. First, we have this reassignment idea. We're going to take the old new string we defined here, and we're going to define it as being equal to itself plus whatever I is, and something we do to that. We can talk about in just a moment. Remember, for strings, the plus operation is what squishes strings together when you want to add more letters and more characters to a string. And then I'm using the upper method to capitalize the string I in the same instance. So if I press Command Return, and then I now, in the console, type print new underscore string, then what has been saved in the value of new string are only these two capital P's, since that's when the condition was met in our loop. It's a pretty contrived example of this defining this empty element so we have a place to save things, but in the next activity we're going to do, you're going to use that exact idea. That's why I introduced it here. But you can see what happens if I remove, if I put a comment on new string, I'm going to come up here and remove new string from my variable explorer. All of them will be removed. Am I sure I want to do that? Sure, do it. I don't care. So now new string doesn't exist. So if I try and run this for loop, we're going to have a problem. It's going to say we can't save anything in new string because new string was never defined. We have no place to save these modified characters. So we have to have this command with new string being equal to something empty. We have a place to send these modified characters. Any questions on that last part? Yes. I dot upper, right. So remember the dot upper is one of these methods for modifying strings.
You know what? It's about the time he sent me his email.
So for example, if I just have keys typed as a string and I type dot upper, I'm accessing the upper method to capitalize the letters in G. But I is now the index variable, so I'm doing that upper method to the index variable I we're using. So you have a lot of flexibility. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be something that you define with a new variable assignment. You can just act on I itself. Yes.
Hi, Michael. This is Eloy. I just want to give you some good news and bad news about your reservation.
There
was a clerical error. They happened to accidentally
automatically.
Accidentally.
It's kind of like when you type this combination
unreserved your booking at the one hotel I booked you at, but nonetheless, no worry. I put you at the Hillgard house. So you have parking and you have a room there on a king size bed for the 5 days.
Other question.
I sent you your confirmation email, to your email. So be on the lookout for that. And you have any questions or concerns, please call me. I'll be leaving at 5 o'clock. So
put the print where?
Just check on your email for the reservation information. I put it as high priority. So everything's been set.
Like here? You mean like print new string? Yes, we could absolutely do that. Other question. Okay, let's get some
what do I do?
and a little bit longer, so we're gonna go on
No, it's not.
to the end.
Where
Just
you going?
Pick up tomorrow.
Where are you going?
Going over this example. So now the case is we're going to practice using loops inside of a script to determine what's called the reverse complement for a gene sequence. So after you pair off with your partners from before, go ahead and open the file rev comp_student.py. Here we go. Where I've
they can hear me.
Started you off with the import sys function and then some instructions about what we're doing within this task. That's going to explain to you some of these steps about which things to define, when to start your loop, and what your loop needs to be doing within each iteration. But the idea in short is you're going to provide it with a sequence of letters, ATGC, and then you're going to change each individual nucleotide to its complement. So, right, so if you encounter an A, then change it to T, thanks. If you encounter a T, change it to an A, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, you'll switch the ordering so it's reversed at the very end. And as usual, I'll be walking around helping field any questions folks have. Unfortunately, the script is a bit large to fit fully here, so I kind of have to just leave this page up. Okay, go ahead and.
Sorry, are you able to hear me?
No.
No, you're fine with the speaker. No, it's just like I left my speaker
Oh,
on.
okay. Okay, let's pair off and work on that task for the last 10 minutes, and then we're done. If you have to, yeah, that's totally fine. Thank you for asking.
It's pretty much what he was doing there. Look around the whole string. So it is just new one, just complements, and then you reverse it later.
It's a lot.
I know. It should be 8.
Yeah. No, I guess you can't.
There's like a switch statement. Like, yeah. I think so, yeah. Totally, yeah. Same. Right.
You just have two open quotes like that. That tells it it's a string.
Making a loop to
Go through each.
yeah on the back.
So what is this now?
So now we have a whole bunch of complement sequencing. Yeah, reverse it. Yeah. Then there's How would you like to do it?
I guess yes, as you said, I do just go through. Oh, actually, maybe like we did is like define that within the strings.
Sure. Yeah.
And then that variable just gets switched. Does that make sense? No.
Say it again. Sorry.
So I was thinking for the, or no, that's if you're making a new variable, right?
I was just like reverse this time.
Yeah.
Because we make the count.
This is the reverse one. Is going to be. So I almost think that a new one variable, right? And go through for loop, and then whatever.
Because we know the length, we can write.
Yeah. So. Can you start it?
I think so. Yeah. That's actually the most straightforward one. Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that before. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
You could do that.
We can print just -1 to 0. Can we do that? I don't know.
Trash. That's what.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know whether it works.
I'm not sure.
Make sure you use a very clear example sequence.
Oh yeah.
Because depending on if you happen to pick a palindromic one,
That's a good point.
Do that one. Save it. I have one stop. I know, I'm trying to figure it out. It should work. Yeah, I just. Right. Where's my file?
Here's your downloads.
Oh, no, you could use a So like for this notation, I want to say just the icon element of the new series.
Yeah. CD to download.
Yeah. Because you're already.
Yeah, that's right. You're trying to type it.
Downloads.
Is it? Right. And also capitalize.
Does it just happen?
Oh yeah, you're right. They do.
There you go.
Then I should have file and then what's that called?
I don't think you have to do quotes.
Oh, that's true. It's automatically saved. Oh, the ad.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I think after else you need to do
Something like that.
the colon after house.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
You do it again or no? Did you ask it to?
Then I print something randomly. Because I knew it that works. So.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It should work. Didn't print that one. So yeah, should work that way. Yeah. Because I think that one, because I looked at my lies statement from the beginning to the end. Like we're doing it in the backwards, step by everyone. It works that way.
So I don't understand.
But if you put one, it just gives you the original sequence.
But do you have three?
I have to call it. It mean like beginning to the end, and then by second one or by one.
Oh.
Yeah. So I know that one works.
When it's just open,
Yeah.
nothing in there, and then
Nothing.
it's beginning to end.
Right.
And then you have like this one, which is going to go by one. But this is going to do it from the beginning, right? So you
Right.
have negative one start
So,
from the end.
Negative one just means like doing that.
Going backwards.
Yeah. That one definitely works because I tried
Oh,
it.
so from
Yeah.
the beginning to the end.
But I don't know whether that one works.
I don't think it works.
This thing doesn't work. Yeah. So I don't know.
Maybe range.
Well, we can try range just over the different ways. Like that's the easiest way.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that would be the case.
same order. Yeah. How about here, right? So when this runs, every time you hit this part, you add something onto the end. Yeah. Here. Right here, sorry. I was thinking, yeah, it just adds on first. Right. And then here this new string is empty. So that one just one,
I believe.
then go to the beginning, I take some text on it. I come in here, and that's what you're doing. You're adding I to the end. You have to use plus.
Okay.
Because my understanding is like colon just mean like from the beginning to the end.
Like if you just don't specify. It's
Right.
then you can have
Right. If you want to specify like you can specify 2 to 8
Right.
or something like that. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Get up there, get back.
To the left.
Yeah.
Oh god.
This is good. I'm learning a lot. Now after I do this, I can, I want to learn some skip some of the then I can see if I can understand it.
It should work. Because I feel like you already have like the
Yeah.
program and background.
And that helps a lot. Yeah.
Pretty well. It's just like we're working on some sequencing data and then I guess no. It's a pretty small lab, but honestly, is that you want to have like really small. So cell line and I cell line what we do and back like data out that's why like yeah. Anyway, just go into sequencing thing. I feel like you're supposed to know a little bit.
So what do you want?
So you do that again. To allow collaborate with medical, and then I just like yeah, it was good for us.
So do you do wet lab stuff?
Yeah, most of the lab. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. We're hearing I thought I was putting it
Yeah, this is definitely a workable solution. You'll complement. Yeah. And then separately, you're going to do the reversal. Yeah. So you just have to do it in this way. Yeah. I know, there's no opposite. Yeah, that's part of why I do this. Like, oh, yeah. If that existed, this second half of this you are right now. If I equals character A, then I want to say T as variable. And then what would you do with those? You don't have to change the sequence value. And sometimes you don't want to, but sometimes maybe it's to the data and save this. So here, although that was close, can you undo? Yes. You see, you can use when you try that, try. Oh, great. I don't want to do that. That's not bad. That's right. So, how long is your test sequence? Great. How many times does A show up? Once. Right. So, when A shows up, you have if I is just A. We're doing something A equals T. We're also doing new C plus T. Written this. So forget about A equals T right now because we're not seeing that. We're just seeing new C printed here. Okay. So new C equals new C plus T. Print new C. End of the loop. We go back to the beginning and we run it again. So this first T corresponds to that first A. And then you keep printing it because inside of your for loop, at the end of each loop, print new C. Oh, so new C hasn't changed because so far you only have this first if statement that do something based on it. Oh, so that's why you keep printing T over and over, which really is okay. You could do another test. Replace all those letters with A. Just make it be beta. And then for the rest for C, make C equal both of those blocks of code. Or the one above as well, yeah. Okay. All right. Now we see what's happening. It is. That's what this does. Yeah, we'll get there next. For now, you're replacing A's with T's. We'll also need to replace T's with A's, G's with C's, C's with G's. Yeah. You're welcome. Laura, you got it. Cool. Now, what if perfect. Oh, perfect. For your print stick. It's inside of your build. Oh. There we go. Yeah, try it. Oh, because you, yeah.
So
Where do you define new seek the first time? Very first time. Yeah, separate cell. Change something. So if we have new sequence equals new sequence. Oh. One over there. The phone? The headphones. Oh, yeah. Okay, go. So you're trying merging these two cells. Because, yeah, because now you're not refreshing new C1 every time. So you keep adding more things to this. No, just one. You had those two lines, C1, new C1, right, you had them like this. And the problem with this is that you have to run both of those blocks of code one after the other. Because this one initializes, it defines new C1. This one adds. And so if you don't always run this one, you're going to keep adding those to it over. You need to run them both together, one after the other. Now they're in the same cell, and they always run. Where does your 4 start with respect to the other? There you go. Perfect. When you so in one section, you're defining new variable, new secret. Yeah. And then the other section, you're like adding things to that you're actually seeing. And you kept running this block of code, rerunning the one up here. So every time you ran this smaller block, you're adding more things to new seek. New seek was never reset to 0. Because they were two separate cells. They would run independent of each other. And that's okay. You just have to remember that that's how code is set up. Oh, for first you just work the top block, then you run the bottom. Like this will happen. Yeah. Alternatively, like you said, do this, where you merge them all into one block. They always run together. Yep. Yeah, so the very first thing this block does, it defines C1, and then it makes new C1 empty. So it's always doing those first two parts. Cool. Are folks just hanging out, or do you guys have questions? Sure. Okay, and you tried the thing with the print? I tried it, but yeah. Good, I don't know. So these 1s and 5s, where are the 1s and 5s?
So one of mine is that I try to
Where's the, so this is the code, where's the output? Can we look at them at the same time?
Oh, fair. Because I added,
I don't know what this is.
oh, just,
So like these are different tabs. Something.
no, I'm just like added to the file.
But can you open them as like, can you open a Unix window where you're editing the file and a Unix
Oh,
window where you're writing it? So we can look at side by side what your code
Right.
says and what it does. Yeah. In C, this part, first you print the statement, it prints the statement. Then it prints seat count. One, then 5. Agree. And then in quotes, ampersand 0.3f, so that's why you have 3 decimal places. And that follows by seat count T.
Oh, you guys are still here?
Oh, I like this seat. Yeah, there's a few questions. Okay. Yeah, I mean, can I lock up? Where is it from?
Yeah, just so, I'm gonna turn the stuff I know you can forget.
Okay, yeah.
Can you know how to lock up?
Yeah, just close the door.
Yeah. Let me see if it's actually closed. So we're gonna go pick up my car. So.
Two vision symbols.
No, it's not. Yeah,
Two slashes is another.
Yeah, we said.
Alright, thanks.
yeah, I can go back to
That's fine. If that's supposed to work, that's great. It's not. It's just not.
right.
Or small. So I just thought.
Oh,
Okay, what if you put a period in front of it? Yeah, the slash. The dot slash. Or with a bunch of it. Yeah, I really don't know.
it's okay. Yeah.
You're running.
Fine.
This is.
It's okay.
This isn't. What's your OS? This is Unix.
Oh, that's just Hoffman too, yeah.
So, talk to me about Hoffman 2 like I don't know what Hoffman 2 is. Because I don't.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't use Hoffman 2.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I deal with my secret stuff.
So I got to work.
Yeah,
Except that. Yeah. Right. But so you're.
Because it wants to print on you, but I told it.
Is Hoffman 2 is a different thing than just Unix.
Which is fine.
It's the Unix is what they name it as.
So we give it
All right, I'll get that. But I mean, it's
Hoffman 2 is easy, and then it gives us the proper
but it's
CTT,
running
but that's always.
like a different operating system.
Yeah, I have it. You keep saying different, just for a second, check.
This Unix, they already have
I want this one to be a string, not a list. So I told it that it's a string, not a list. But it took it as a list.
Yeah, I guess we're wondering if there's something different about running Python on the Unix.
It works, but it's not.
Yeah, so you're gonna use Python and give you the
machine, though? Like, so I guess, your laptop, is it Mac, is it Windows? Windows. So you could run the command line. Instead of doing all this from within the Hoffman.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I use it from there.
Instead of trying using the command line.
Yeah, so here I am in numbers, right? So just for this one, instead of starting from one, I'm starting from negative, I'm going dash, right? Minus sign each time. Which works. You put it in Blues and
and feel free if
We're at the very bottom.
you think there's anything, and I'll write back to this one here.
So that's just new seed.
Right. Well,
That's temps.
Yeah.
So I want new seed as a string. Because the brackets and the commas and whatnot's not a good. That's just a list. So it's all fine and dandy. I just don't know how to make a list into a string. I tried. I did this little shit here. New seed equals the string.
already a string type, so I think that would be.
Well, I actually set it as a list. Here you see it as a list because it wouldn't let me. It wouldn't let me doing it as to a string. It wouldn't allow me to index the string by
You can't run the command line.
Oh, yeah, I can.
Actually, maybe it would now. I could fix some things. Let's see if that would.
I mean, I don't mean to make this more complicated.
No, it's not. It's just, it's a technical. But I have to copy and paste that.
Oh, because all your
back to-
files from the workshop you saved on the Hoffman account.
Yeah. It's okay. It's just really weird. It's just really weird. Because I
No,
know
that's true. Yeah, you told me before you can't iterate over.
So you take numbers like the other workshops
Yeah.
for working with Hoffman.
Yeah, that's
for
what it was.
sequencing,
Yeah,
the NGS analysis, you have to do it on.
yeah. Okay, good.
I don't have to and whole power to do. I get to do it.
Right. No, that's good though. So because I want to make sure that you're getting the right information from the right people
Right.
to use Hoffman. You just have this other weird thing happening.
I don't know. Is it because like the version of Python is 2 here, or like we're running 3?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be because what I understand is that as soon as your computer connects back to the internet,
Right.
the Python sources find out that you're running 2, they're going to remove 2 from your computer. The Python 2 is no longer supported in this like quote unquote nuclear option where we just try to remove all 2 versions of it. But
I just want to give me some decimal number at least.
yeah, you could. So you're taking the one with Peter? Is that his name, right? The NGS workshop?
Oh, it's the next
week?
one, I think.
Oh, it's next week.
Yeah.
They might have some ideas as people who work with. Or oh, okay, that's it. Yeah, my point's. Yeah, you may have some foresight to help with this. It's a use instance that I don't run into because I never.
Right, you guys do like imaging stuff. I just realized it. Like,
Yeah.
oh shit, I mentioned half of it too. I saw exactly like know all the
No.
quantum
I know that, but
yeah.
not because of Hoffman.
But
Sorry.
I used to like do quantum mechanics like this stuff like in the past.
Cool.
Very good for me.
Yeah.
I don't do like single calculus right now. Anyway, it's something I don't use. So
It's a little easier.
yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could.
I know. It's just so weird. And then like whenever I need to use Hoffman, and then they just hit me 0 all the time. That's not helpful in the future if I'm doing some deep analysis.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that it is something that's like, oh, this is a problem, but you're going to fix it, and then it's never an issue again. It's just not the thing I know that fixed
Yeah, me neither. It should be fine on the Windows CMD, but I haven't tried. But
Right.
it's fine.
Yeah, and that's what my hope is that I'm convincing this is something only specific. I think you're the only person in here who's running Hoffman like this.
Right, right. But I don't think like people using Hoffman even Mac, you know, CMD.
Cool. You're running a Python class on Hoffman?
It's just, they already have Python. You don't have to even install it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. But it gave me some headache. Thanks, all. Thanks.
Yeah. See you guys tomorrow.
See you.